25 Formula One season is finally here, and after what felt like the longest winter break since Red Bull's last budget cap excuse, the engines are roaring once again. But before the points start getting handed out and Twitter erupts into its usual chaos, we have to go through the sacred ritual of pre-season testing. 3 days in Bahrain where teams pretend lap times don't matter while secretly sweating bullets over every tenth of a second. So buckle up, because things are already looking wild. Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, and even Williams have shown signs of life. But the real question is, who's got the biggest shot at the title? At 10 a.m. in Bahrain, the green light flashed, and teams wasted no time. Cars rolled out with those massive aero sensors that look like they belong in a NASA space mission, and Ferrari and Mercedes were among the first to test the airflow wizardry. Meanwhile, in a plot twist worthy of a Netflix drama, Red Bull decided to let Liam Lawson take the wheel instead of Verstappen. And boom, Lawson topped the timesheets. Not sure if Verstappen took that well or if Christian Horner was already drafting the termination papers. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton made his Ferrari debut with a kind of eerie calm that makes you nervous. He did a few laps, went back to the garage, and then just stood there looking at the car. Naturally, Twitter exploded with theories. Was he missing Mercedes? Was he praying to Schumacher? Was he just having a deep existential moment like a barista at a hipster cafe? Over at McLaren, things started off worse than a blind date with your ex-Piastri managed only 7 laps in 90 minutes, making fans wonder if the car had decided to boycott testing altogether. The biggest scare of the day came from Fernando Alonso, whose Aston Martin suddenly slowed down. Fortunately, it wasn't serious, but let's be real, trusting an Aston Martin's reliability is like trusting airport Wi-Fi to actually work. Conclusion: Ferrari looks solid, Mercedes isn't dead, and Red Bull, well, something's definitely going on. Day 2 brought unexpected chaos, rain in Bahrain. The desert is supposed to be dry, but the weather gods decided to add a little extra spice, shaking things up for everyone. Lewis Hamilton, now looking more comfortable in red than Leclerc in his own house, topped the timesheets. Behind him, George Russell put in a solid long-run stint in Mercedes, and while his first laps were great, by the end, his lap times dropped faster than an iPhone battery on iOS 17. Mercedes' tyre degradation issues are still very much a thing, something they've been trying to fix since Hamilton had long hair. Red Bull, on the other hand, had bigger problems. First, their lap times were all over the place, fluctuating like crypto prices. Then, the car overheated, forcing them to cut the session short. Are they actually in trouble? Or are they just playing the long game and sandbagging? As the dust settles on Bahrain's pre-season testing, one thing is clear. The 2025 Formula One season is shaping up to be absolute chaos. The final day of testing was a perfect mix of speed, drama, and more unanswered questions than a conspiracy documentary. Lewis Hamilton has officially settled into Ferrari like he was born to drive a red car. Mercedes has made serious gains. Williams might actually be a dark horse. And Red Bull, yes, Red Bull, is either sandbagging like crazy or actually in trouble. And let's not forget McLaren, which is somewhere between quietly confident and accidentally built a tractor. But the biggest question remains, who the hell is actually leading the pecking order? Ferrari has shown blistering pace with Hamilton and Leclerc matching each other's times, which is either a sign of harmony or a recipe for disaster. Mercedes has made a genuine leap forward, with George Russell leading the charge while Antonelli quietly impresses. Meanwhile, Williams, yes, Williams, might just be cooking something seriously dangerous with Sainz and Albon. But the most confusing storyline? Red Bull. Max Verstappen, the reigning world champion, spent most of testing locking up, running wide, and sending mechanics into full crisis mode. The man looked more frustrated than a gamer on a Wi-Fi lag spike. Meanwhile, his new teammate, Liam Lawson, showed flashes of speed but not enough to scream title contender just yet. Christian Horner and Helmut Marko have been suspiciously quiet. Are they really struggling with car balance? Or are they pulling the biggest poker face in F1 history? And then there's McLaren. While Norris and Piastri didn't dominate the timesheets, their long-run pace suggests that this could be a repeat of last season, starting slow but building up to absolute rocket mode by mid-year. One thing's for sure, 2025 is not a one-team show anymore. This isn't 2023 where Red Bull won by lap 10 of every race. This season is looking like a proper scrap, and we love to see it. So let's break it down. What do we actually know going into round one in Australia? Ferrari is fast. Hamilton and Leclerc are pushing each other, and the car looks solid on both single lap and race pace. The only question, how long before their partnership explodes into an all-out civil war? Mercedes is back. Russell is confident. Antonelli is adapting fast. And for the first time in 3 years, they don't look like they're driving a science experiment gone wrong. Williams is the wild card. Sainz topped the session. Albon was consistently in the top 5. Either they found something huge, or they were running the lightest car in Bahrain. Red Bull is either bluffing or genuinely struggling. Verstappen does not look happy. If the RB21 isn't perfect, we might actually see him work for a title this year. McLaren is playing it safe. They could be saving fuel, hiding pace, or just taking it slow to avoid the inevitable British media hype train. As we gear up for the season opener in Australia, the tension in the paddock is so thick you could cut it with a carbon fiber front wing. Ferrari is riding a wave of optimism, with Hamilton and Leclerc seemingly locked in an unspoken battle of who owns this team. Mercedes has finally stopped making experimental lawnmowers and looks genuinely competitive. Williams, yes, we're still talking about Williams, might be onto something massive. Meanwhile, Red Bull is either about to unleash the RB21's full potential or implode like a Netflix drama. And now, all eyes are on Melbourne. The Albert Park circuit is notoriously tricky. It's fast, it's technical, and it punishes cars that don't have balance. So, if Red Bull really is struggling, we're about to find out very quickly. For Ferrari, this is the real test. They might have looked quick in testing, but can they actually keep up with Red Bull and Mercedes when it counts? Hamilton is eager to prove that he made the right call leaving Mercedes, while Leclerc is probably wondering how the hell he's supposed to fight his own teammate and Max Verstappen at the same time. Mercedes, meanwhile, is playing it cool. Russell is walking around like a man who knows something we don't. Antonelli is keeping his head down, but whispers from the garage suggest that he's already faster than expected. But the real wild card? Williams. Sainz and Albon have been shockingly quick, and if they bring this pace to Australia, we could see them fighting at the front. Imagine saying that 2 years ago. Then there's McLaren. Their quiet pre-season has left people guessing, but they have a history of sandbagging before unleashing absolute missiles on race day. Don't be surprised if Norris suddenly pops up in the top 3. And what about Red Bull? Is Verstappen really struggling? Or has Adrian Newey just been messing with us? Melbourne is going to answer one of 2 questions. Red Bull is still dominant, and Verstappen walks away with an easy win. Red Bull is genuinely in trouble, and we get the closest title fight in years. Either way, we win. The first practice session is going to be fascinating. If Ferrari is genuinely on par with Red Bull, we're looking at a season-long war between Hamilton, Leclerc, and Verstappen. If Mercedes is genuinely back in the fight, we could be seeing the return of a 3-way battle for the title. And if Williams is actually fast, well, someone please check on Frank Williams' ghost because he must be loving this. As we stand on the precipice of the 2025 Formula One season, the landscape has never looked more unpredictable. Testing has wrapped up, the teams have packed their gear, and all eyes are now locked on Melbourne, where the Real battle begins. The whispers, the data, the speculation, it all means nothing once the lights go out and 20 of the fastest cars on Earth go barreling into Turn 1 at Albert Park. The biggest story heading into the season is undoubtedly Ferrari. Their SF25 has been fast, stable, and, crucially, reliable. But the million-dollar question is, was that just testing, or are they genuinely ready to take the fight to Red Bull? Hamilton has looked shockingly comfortable in red. He's adapting quicker than anyone expected, dialing in his preferred setup, demanding perfection from the team in a way only a 7-time world champion can. If Ferrari delivers a competitive car, there's no doubt he'll be in the fight for his 8th title. But what about Leclerc? The Monegasque is not here to be anyone's number 2. He's been the golden boy at Ferrari since 2019, and the last thing he's going to do is roll over for a new teammate, even if that teammate is Lewis freaking Hamilton. If Ferrari truly has a car capable of winning, then Leclerc versus Hamilton is a battle that could define the entire season, and possibly shake the Scuderia to its core. Verstappen didn't look comfortable in the RB21. He struggled with balance, the car seemed twitchy in slow corners, and even his best lap times weren't quite as dominant as we've come to expect. But here's the problem. No one trusts Red Bull's testing pace. They are the masters of deception, sandbagging their way through pre-season only to turn up at the first race and obliterate the field. Is Verstappen's discomfort real? Or has Red Bull been running heavy, hiding pace, and preparing to unleash absolute hell on the competition when it really matters? And then there's Liam Lawson. The New Zealander has now secured a full-time Red Bull seat, but will he be allowed to race Max, or is he just there to fill the Perez-shaped void? The answer to that could define how much of a challenge Verstappen faces, not just from other teams, but from within his own garage. Mercedes has stopped playing around with weird concept cars and finally seems to have built something competitive. Russell looks confident, Antonelli has shown flashes of brilliance, and the team, after 2 painful years of struggling, might actually be back in the fight. But how much of a fight can they put up? The car still has issues with tyre degradation, and in a season where consistency will be everything, they cannot afford to drop the ball on race pace. However, if Mercedes finds those missing tenths, Russell versus Hamilton versus Verstappen versus Leclerc could be the title fight we've all been dreaming of. If Ferrari and Mercedes are the expected challengers, then McLaren and Williams are the unexpected ones. McLaren was oddly quiet in testing, but when has that ever meant anything? They have a history of holding back before delivering an absolute weapon on race day. If Norris and Piastri suddenly show up in Melbourne fighting for the podium, don't act surprised. And then there's Williams. This is not the same team that spent years at the back of the grid. They've made huge strides, and with Sainz and Albon at the wheel, they could be a serious problem for the top teams. Their testing pace was no fluke. This team means business. Everything we've seen so far has been a preview, a teaser for what's coming next. Melbourne is where the Real story begins. Will Red Bull silence the doubters and start 2025 with another dominant win? Will Ferrari finally return to the top and put an end to their championship drought? Will Mercedes shock everyone and prove they're still a force to be reckoned with? Will McLaren and Williams crash the party and steal points from the big teams? And most importantly, who is going to be the undisputed leader at Ferrari? No matter what happens, this season is shaping up to be one of the most exciting, unpredictable, and chaotic in recent history. Now, over to you. Who do you think will take pole in Australia? Is Ferrari the real deal? Or is Red Bull still the team to beat? Drop your predictions in the comments, subscribe to